The sound of heavy, mud-caked work boots hitting the polished mahogany table was the loudest noise I had ever heard. It wasn't a slam, but a heavy, disrespectful thud that echoed in the silent boardroom. My stomach dropped. I stared at the boots. I knew them. I had polished them every Sunday night for 20 years. They belonged to my father. Julian, the 27-year-old heir who had been CEO for exactly 6 days, stood over the table with a sneer on his face. He had just dumped the contents of a black trash bag right in front of the board of directors. It wasn't garbage. It was my father's legacy, his framed Employee of the Month photos, his old blue uniform cap, and those boots. "We are rebranding," Julian announced, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Vanguard Holdings needs a fresh image. We need pedigree. We don't need the janitor's kid pretending she belongs in the C-suite." I stood up, my hands trembling under the table. "I am the Director of Operations, Julian. I've worked here for 15 years. I built the logistics network that earned this company millions last quarter." Julian laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound. "You're here because my grandfather had a soft spot for charity cases. But he's dead. And you're fired. Effective immediately. Get your trash and get out." He pointed a manicured finger at the door. The humiliation burned my skin like fire. I looked at the board members, men and women I had worked with for a decade. They looked down at their papers, refusing to meet my eyes. Cowards. "Security!" Julian barked. 2 guards stepped forward. "Escort her out. And toss this junk in the dumpster." "Don't touch them," I said, my voice low. I reached for the boots, clutching them to my chest. They smelled like oil and hard work. They smelled like my dad. "You're making a mistake, Julian," I said, staring him dead in the eyes. "The only mistake was letting you stay this long," he spat. "Get out." The walk to the elevator felt like a funeral march. The security guards, men I used to chat with every morning about football and the weather, wouldn't look at me. They gripped my arms tight, like I was a criminal. I didn't fight them. I held my father's boots against my silk blouse, not caring about the dirt. "My name is Kara. For 35 years, this building had been my second home. My father, Arthur, had been the head custodian for 4 decades. He scrubbed these floors so I could go to college. He fixed the boilers in the middle of the night so the executives wouldn't be cold. When I got my MBA, he cried right in the lobby. He was so proud that his daughter had an office on the top floor. Now, I was being thrown out onto the street. The automatic doors slid open, and the cold air hit me. It was raining. Of course it was raining. The guards stopped at the curb. "Sorry, Kara," one of them whispered, finally looking at me. "He's watching on the cameras. We had to." "It's okay, Mike," I said, my voice hollow. "It's not your fault." I stood on the wet sidewalk as the doors slid shut, sealing me out of the life I had built. I walked to my car, a sensible sedan parked in the back lot. I tossed the boots onto the passenger seat and gripped the steering wheel. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stared at the towering glass building. Julian thought he had just taken out the trash. He didn't realize he had just severed the brain of the entire operation. I took a deep breath. My hands stopped shaking. I reached into my pocket and felt the cold metal of a key. Not my office key, they took that. It was the key to my dad's old safety deposit box. My mind drifted back to the funeral 6 months ago. It was a gray, somber day. The founder, Julian's grandfather, was being laid to rest. Hundreds of employees were there, crying genuine tears. He was a good man. He knew everyone's name. He respected hard work. I remembered standing near the back, trying to be respectful. Julian was in the front row, checking his watch every 5 minutes. He looked bored. He was texting during the eulogy. That was the moment I knew the company was in trouble. He didn't care about the legacy, he only cared about the inheritance. After the service, the founder's old lawyer, a kind man named Mr. Henderson, had pulled me aside. Arthur was a good friend to him, Kara, Henderson had said, his voice shaky. The founder trusted your father more than his own blood sometimes. Keep an eye on the place. Julian is different. I will, I had promised. Flash forward to today. I had failed. I sat in my car, rain drumming on the roof. I had tried to protect the company. I had tried to stop Julian from cutting corners on safety protocols to boost his bonus. That's why he fired me. I refused to sign off on a budget cut that would have endangered the warehouse workers. Insubordination, he had called it. I started the car engine. The heater kicked on, blasting warm air onto my freezing hands. I looked at the building one last time. You want to run it alone, Julian? I whispered to the glass tower. Go ahead. Let's see how far you get without the map. I wasn't going to sue him. Not yet. I was going to let him learn the hard way. I put the car in drive and pulled away, leaving my career in the rearview mirror. For the first week, I sat on my couch in my pajamas, staring at the wall. The depression was heavy, like a physical weight on my chest. I had worked since I was 16. I didn't know how to be idle. My phone sat on the coffee table, silent. I had been cut off from the company email, the servers, everything. Then, on Monday morning, the phone finally buzzed. It wasn't a friend. It was a number I recognized, the main line for the logistics center. I let it ring. It stopped. Then it rang again. And again. I finally picked it up, putting it on speaker but saying nothing. Kara? Kara, are you there? It was Stacy, Julian's new assistant. She sounded panicked. Look, I know what happened, and it's awful, but we have a situation. The automated ordering system is down. The trucks are sitting at the dock, and nothing is moving. I took a sip of my tea. Hello, Stacy. I don't work there anymore. I know. But the system is asking for a Monday override code. Julian is screaming at everyone. He says you changed the passwords before you left. I didn't change anything, I said calmly. The system requires a manual security code every Monday to prevent hacking. It's a safety feature I installed 5 years ago. Okay, what is it? Stacy asked, desperate. It changes every week based on an algorithm, I said. I used to calculate it in my head on the drive-in. Can you give it to me? I don't recall it, I said. I'm not an employee. I don't have access to my notes. And honestly, my memory has been very foggy since I was fired. I hung up. 2 hours later, there was a pounding on my front door. I looked through the peephole. It was a courier, holding a thick red envelope. Behind him, a black town car sat idling at the curb. I opened the door. The courier looked nervous. Caravans? Yes. Delivery from the executive office of Vanguard Holdings. I took the envelope. Inside was a letter on official letterhead, signed by Julian. It wasn't an apology. It was a demand. You are hereby ordered to surrender all company passwords, encryption keys, and administrative codes immediately. Failure to comply will result in legal action for theft of intellectual property. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. He still thought he could bully me. He thought I was holding the codes hostage. He didn't understand that there were no written codes. The system was me. It was 10 years of intuition and mental math that I had never written down because I was never asked to. I went into my kitchen, grabbed a blank piece of printer paper, and folded it neatly. I placed it inside a fresh envelope. I walked back to the courier. "Here. Is this the passwords?" he asked. "It's everything I have written down," I said truthfully. He took it and ran back to the car. I watched from the window. I imagined the look on Julian's face when he opened the envelope and found absolutely nothing. I knew I needed a new job. I couldn't sit around and wait for my savings to run out. I dusted off my resume and applied to a competitor, Nexus Logistics. I was perfect for the role. I had the experience, the contacts, and the reputation. The interview went perfectly. The hiring manager, a woman named Diane, was nodding along, smiling. We clicked instantly. "Honestly, Kara," she said, closing my folder. "You're exactly what we need. I'm ready to make an offer right now." My heart soared. Finally, a way out. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. She looked at me, then back at the phone. The warmth vanished from her eyes. "Is everything okay?" I asked. Diane cleared her throat. "Actually, Kara, I need to pause this process. We have to review some internal budgets." "You just said you were ready to make an offer," I said, confused. "I did. But I just got a message." She hesitated, then looked at me with pity. "Julian called our CEO. He told him you were fired for embezzlement. He said you're under investigation." The room spun. "That's a lie. A complete lie." "I believe you," Diane whispered. "But until you clear your name, no one in this town will hire you. Julian is making sure you're blacklisted." I walked out of that office shaking with rage. It wasn't enough to fire me. He wanted to starve me. He wanted to destroy my life so I would come crawling back and beg. I drove straight to the bank. I needed to feel close to my dad. I needed to remember why I was fighting. I signed in and was led to the vault. The safety deposit box was old and dusty. I carried the metal box to a private room and opened it. I expected to find maybe a few savings bonds or family photos. Instead, the box was almost empty. There was just one thing inside, a thick, leather-bound notebook. It was blue, worn at the edges, with the word observations written on the cover in my dad's messy handwriting. I opened it. It wasn't a diary. It was a logbook. March 12, 1998, fixed the HVAC on floor 4. Founder told me about the zoning issue with the West Annex. He's worried. July 4, 2005, came in on the holiday. Founder needed a witness for the new land contract. Signed it for him. My hands trembled as I turned the pages. My dad hadn't just been cleaning floors. He had been the founder's confidant. The founder was a lonely man at the top, and my dad was the only one he trusted. This book contained 20 years of secrets. It contained the location of every skeleton in the closet. And on the very last page, tucked into a pocket, was a business card. Elias Thorne, attorney at law. I knew that name. Elias Thorne was the most expensive, aggressive corporate shark in the city. Why did my janitor father have his personal card? While I was reading the journal, chaos was breaking out at Vanguard Holdings. I saw it on the local news that night. A massive pipe had burst in the basement server room. The footage showed fire trucks and panicked employees running out. The reporter stood in front of the building. Sources say that the cooling system failed, causing the main servers to overheat and melt the plastic piping, the reporter said. Millions of dollars in hardware may be destroyed. I stared at the TV. I knew exactly why it happened. The cooling system had a quirky pressure valve that needed to be manually released every time the humidity dropped below 40%. It was a glitch in the old building's design. My dad had taught me how to wiggle the handle just right. Without me there to do it, or to tell the maintenance crew to do it, the pressure had built up for a week until, boom. My phone rang. It was Julian. I watched it ring. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. I picked up. Hello. You did this, he screamed. He sounded unhinged. You sabotaged the pipes. I haven't been in the building for 2 weeks, Julian, I said calmly. I didn't do anything. That's the problem. You fired the people who knew how to keep the building standing. Tell me how to stop the water, he yelled. The shutoff valve isn't working. There's a secondary valve behind the drywall in the break room, I said. But you'd have to know exactly where to cut. Where? Tell me where. I can't recall, I said. Maybe you should check the manual. Oh, wait. You threw the manual out. The water damage was catastrophic. The next day, Julian called again. His voice was different this time. Controlled. Tense. Kara, he said. Look. Let's be adults. We need your expertise. The board is pressuring me. I'm willing to bring you back as a consultant. Just for a week. To map out the systems. I sat at my kitchen table, the blue journal open in front of me. Okay. Good, he said, sounding relieved. We'll pay you your old hourly rate. No, I said. Excuse me? My consulting fee is $50,000. Up front. Cashier's check only. You're insane, he hissed. That's extortion. No, that's the price of the knowledge you threw away, I said. You wanted pedigree? Pedigree is expensive. You have 1 hour to decide before the price goes up. I'll see you in hell before I pay a janitor's daughter that kind of money, he growled. Then you'd better learn how to swim, I said, and hung up. I knew he wouldn't pay. His ego was too big. But I had rattled him. He was making mistakes. And mistakes were what I needed. 2 days later, the process server arrived. Julian wasn't just refusing to pay, he was attacking. I was served with a massive lawsuit. Vanguard Holdings was suing me for industrial sabotage, intellectual property theft, and breach of fiduciary duty. He was blaming the pipe burst and the system failures on me. He claimed I had planted logic bombs to destroy the company. It was all technical gibberish, but it looked terrifying on paper. He was seeking damages of $5 million. He wanted to take my house, my car, my savings, everything. I sat on my floor, holding the papers. I was scared. I didn't have $5 million. I barely had enough for groceries. I looked at the blue journal again. The business card for Elias Thorne seemed to be staring at me. Elias Thorne. I had nothing to lose. I put on my best suit, the one I wore to board meetings, and drove to the glass skyscraper where Elias Thorne had his office. The receptionist looked at me skeptically. Mr. Thorne doesn't take walk-ins. Tell him Arthur's daughter is here, I said. Tell him I have the blue book. 5 minutes later, I was sitting in a corner office that smelled of expensive leather and cigar smoke. Elias Thorne was an older man with sharp eyes and a suit that cost more than my car. He didn't smile. Arthur, he said, testing the name. Best man I ever knew. He kept my office spotless for 20 years. Never stole a dime, never gossiped. He was invisible, but he saw everything. He left me this, I said, sliding the blue notebook across the desk. Elias opened it. His eyes scanned the pages. A small smile appeared on his lips. This is dynamite, Kara. Do you know what's in here? Some of it, I said. But Julian is suing me. He's trying to crush me. I showed him the lawsuit. Elias glanced at it and laughed. He actually laughed. He's suing you for negligence because you weren't there to fix his mistakes? It's a SLAPP suit. Strategic lawsuit against public participation. He's trying to scare you. It's working, I admitted. I can't afford a lawyer. Elias closed the folder. Arthur never charged me for the extra work he did. He fixed my chair once, you know? Just because he saw it was wobbly. He refused to take money. Elias looked at me. I won't charge you a dime, Kara. Let's go hunting. The deposition was held in a neutral conference room. Julian was there, flanked by 3 nervous-looking corporate lawyers. He looked tired. Dark circles were under his eyes. Elias sat next to me. He was calm, like a shark swimming in shallow water. Julian's lawyer started aggressively. Ms. Vance, did you or did you not delete the administrative protocols before your termination? I did not, I said clearly. The protocols were biolinked to my active employee ID. When Julian fired me and deactivated my ID, the protocols locked down automatically. It's a security feature. You should have provided the bypass codes, the lawyer yelled. I wasn't given the opportunity, I said. I was escorted out by security in under 5 minutes. Elias leaned forward. He didn't look at the lawyer, he looked at Julian. Mr. Julian, Elias said smoothly. Are you aware of the easement agreement of 1995? Julian blinked. The what? The agreement regarding the land your new server annex sits on, Elias said. It's a fascinating document. Julian scoffed. We own that land. My grandfather bought it. Actually, Elias smiled, he didn't. He leased it. From a holding trust. And do you know who manages that trust? Julian went silent. The room got very cold. While the legal battle dragged on, Vanguard Holdings was rotting from the inside. I still had friends there, people who were too scared to speak up publicly but messaged me on encrypted apps. It's a nightmare, one text read. Julian fired the entire IT team yesterday. He's bringing in cheap contractors who don't know the system. We lost another client account. The toilets on the 10th floor are backing up, another said. No one knows how to fix the plumbing. It smells like sewage in the marketing department. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it down. This wasn't my doing. This was the result of arrogance. You can't fire the people who do the actual work and expect the machine to keep running. Then came the text that changed everything. Julian is cooking the books, my friend Sarah wrote. I saw the quarterly report draft. He's hiding the losses from the pipe burst. He's moving money from the pension fund to cover the deficit. My blood ran cold. The pension fund. That was the money for the janitors, the secretaries, the drivers. People like my dad. He wasn't just incompetent. He was a thief. Julian must have realized Elias was onto something, or maybe the financial pressure was getting too high. He reached out for a settlement. We met in a private room at the courthouse. Julian didn't look at me. He looked at the wall. We will drop the lawsuit, his lawyer said. And we will offer Ms. Vance a severance package of 6 months' pay. In exchange, she signs a non-disclosure agreement and returns any and all company documents. It was the make-it-go-away offer. Elias looked at me. It was decent money. It would pay my bills. I thought about the pension fund. I thought about the boots on the table. No, I said. Julian's head snapped up. What do you want? More money? You're greedy, just like. Careful, Elias warned. I don't want your money, I said. I want to know why you're dipping into the employee pension fund. Julian's face went white. Pure, ghostly white. That's slander, his lawyer stammered. Is it? I asked. Or is it in the audit trail? We're done here, Julian said, standing up quickly. He looked terrified. He ran out of the room. That night, Elias and I went through the blue journal with a fine-toothed comb. We found the deed entry. The founder had wanted to expand the building in 1995, but he had maxed out his credit. He couldn't buy the adjacent lot. So, he asked my dad, who had saved every penny he ever earned, to buy the land under a generic trust name and then lease it back to the company for $1 a year. It was a handshake deal between friends. The founder got his land, my dad got to help the company he loved. But the lease had a clause. In the event of the founder's death, the lease must be renegotiated with the trustee within 6 months, or the lease is void. The trustee was Arthur Vance. And I was Arthur Vance's sole heir. The 6-month deadline passed last week, Elias said, adjusting his glasses. The lease is void. Julian is trespassing. The building, the massive server annex that held all the company's data, was sitting on my land. And he didn't have a lease. The next morning, we didn't send a lawsuit. We sent an eviction notice. I signed it myself. Caravans, landowner. We gave Vanguard Holdings 48 hours to vacate the premises or face forcible removal by the sheriff. It was a nuclear bomb. You can't move a server farm in 48 hours. It takes months. If they had to shut down the servers, the company would go dark. Their stock would hit zero. I sat in Elias's office waiting for the fallout. He's going to come at you with everything he has, Elias warned. Let him come, I said. My phone blew up. Not Julian this time. The media. Someone had leaked the eviction notice. Janitor's daughter evicts billion-dollar company. The headline was everywhere. Twitter was on fire. People loved it. The underdog story. The revenge. But Julian wasn't done. Julian hired private security. A lot of them. They surrounded the server annex like a private army. He put out a statement saying I was a fraud, that the deed was forged, and that I was trying to blackmail the company. He blocked the city inspectors from entering. It was a siege. Police cars surrounded the block. The news helicopters circled overhead. I stood behind the police tape, watching the chaos. He's digging his own grave, Elias said. Blocking a landlord from their property is a felony. He's desperate, I said. He knows if I get in there, I'll see the servers. I'll see the financial data he's trying to hide. That was the key. He wasn't protecting the servers from me. He was protecting the evidence of his fraud. Then came the betrayal. I was watching the news when I saw Sarah, my friend, the one who texted me about the pension fund, walking out of the building with Julian. Microphones were shoved in her face. Caravans is lying, Sarah said, reading from a prepared statement. Her voice was shaking. I saw her delete the files. She bragged about it. She wants to destroy this company. I gasped. Sarah, no. I knew why she did it. She was a single mom. Julian probably threatened her job, her pension, her livelihood. He forced her to lie. But it hurt. It felt like a knife in my back. The public opinion started to sway. Maybe I was the villain? Maybe I was just a bitter ex-employee? We need proof, Elias said. We need hard proof that he's lying, or the judge might grant him an emergency injunction to stay on the land. I went back to the blue journal. I was looking for anything, a hidden safe, a backup file, anything. Then I saw it. A sketch of the HVAC system. My dad had drawn little arrows in the vents. Motion cams installed 2001. Founder worried about theft in the server room. Independent battery loop. Not on the grid. My dad had installed spy cameras in the vents. Old school. Not digital. They recorded onto SD cards hidden in the vent casings. If they were still there, and if the batteries had lasted. They record on a loop, I whispered. Motion activated. They would have recorded whoever was in the server room the night of the hack. I need to get into that room, I told Elias. You can't, he said. It's surrounded by guards. I'm the landlord, I said. I have a right to inspect for structural damage. The police have to let me in. We went to the precinct. Elias argued with the captain for an hour. Finally, the captain agreed. 1 hour, the captain said. Ms. Vance can inspect the property with a police escort. No company personnel allowed inside during the inspection. We drove to the annex. Julian was screaming at the police, but they held him back. I walked past him. He looked sweaty and wild-eyed. You're trespassing, he yelled. Get off my lawn, Julian, I said. I entered the server room. It was humming, the lights blinking blue. I grabbed a ladder from the corner. What are you doing? The police officer asked. Checking the vents, I said. Mold inspection. I climbed up. I found the loose grate my dad had marked in the book. I pulled it open. There, covered in dust, was a small black box. A hidden camera. I pulled the SD card out. It was old, but it looked intact. We didn't go to the press. We went to the deposition room the next morning. Julian was there, looking smug. He thought Sarah's testimony had saved him. We are prepared to file criminal charges against Ms. Vance, his lawyer began. Elias held up a hand. Before you do that, we'd like to play a video. He plugged the SD card into his laptop and turned the screen toward Julian. The video was grainy, black and white. But it was clear enough. The timestamp was 3 weeks ago. The night of the system crash. The video showed Julian walking into the server room. He was holding a bottle of whiskey. He looked drunk. He stumbled into a rack. He started pulling wires. He was raging, kicking the server towers. Then, he sat at the main terminal. He typed in a password, his password. And he hit delete. He didn't mean to destroy the company. He was just a drunk, angry child throwing a tantrum because the system wasn't working fast enough. The room was dead silent. Julian's face went gray. His lawyer stood up, closed his briefcase, and looked at Julian. I cannot represent you anymore. The video didn't just prove my innocence. It proved Julian was liable for millions of dollars in damages. It proved he lied under oath. It proved he framed me. The board of directors called an emergency meeting that afternoon. They didn't invite Julian. They invited me. I walked into the building. This time, the security guards didn't stop me. Mike, the guard who had escorted me out, opened the door for me. Good to see you, Ms. Vance, he said, smiling. Good to see you, Mike. I took the elevator to the top floor. I pushed open the heavy doors of the boardroom. The same room where I had been fired. The same mahogany table. The board members stood up. They looked ashamed. Kara, the chairman said. We didn't know. You knew, I said, my voice steady. You knew he was incompetent. You knew he was cruel. You just didn't care as long as the stock price was high. I walked to the head of the table. Where is he? I asked. The door to the CEO's office opened. Julian walked out. He looked small. Defeated. I'm prepared to offer a settlement, Julian mumbled. I slammed the blue journal onto the table. The sound echoed just like the boots had. I don't want a settlement, I said. I own the land this company stands on. I own the evidence that will send you to prison for fraud and perjury. I pointed to the door. I want your resignation. Signed. Now. Julian signed the papers with a shaking hand. He was crying. It was pathetic. I built this, he whispered. No, I said. You inherited it. And you broke it. I reached under the table and pulled out a black trash bag. I tossed it to him. Pack your things, I said. You have 5 minutes. The entire board watched in silence as the golden boy shoved his expensive desk ornaments into a garbage bag. He sniffled, wiping his nose on his sleeve. He walked to the door. He stopped and looked at me, waiting for some kind of mercy. I didn't give him any. Leave the badge, I said. He dropped his keycard on the table and walked out. The board offered me the job of CEO immediately. They offered me a massive salary, stock options, everything. I looked around the room. I looked at the table where my dad's boots had sat. No, I said. The chairman was shocked. But, you won. I don't want to run this place, I said. I want to fix it. I'll take the role of chairman of the board. I will hire a CEO who knows what they're doing. And the first thing we're doing is restoring the pension fund. I walked over to the corner of the room. I had brought something with me in my bag. I pulled out my father's work boots. I placed them on the highest shelf of the bookcase, overlooking the entire room. Those stay there, I told the board. As a reminder. If you ever forget who really built this company, look at the boots. I walked out of the boardroom, not as a victim, and not as a tyrant. I walked out as the janitor's daughter. And for the first time in a long time, the air smelled clean.